Hey everyone, this is Freddie with Superbike Unlimited, and as promised, we're pushing forward with the 450 SMR project. You've probably seen our most recent video, which is actually currently uploading. It's approximately 4 days long. This is going to be hopefully a little bit shorter, and we're proceeding with first the weight reduction thing. You know, we've ended up really close to where we started right now in terms of weight, despite adding much more exhaust and, you know, a side stand and a bunch of other stuff. So now what we're going to do is titanium swing arm pivot and rear axle. These are stuff that we love using on super bikes. They always weigh usually about half the originals, and they just look so cool. Obviously, in this case, you're really not even going to be able to see this guy. And all you're going to be able to see of this is, actually, you're not going to be able to see that at all because it's covered up by the frame guard. You're not going to see anything, but they're there. Trust us. And they do weigh less. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to see how much they weigh, and we're going to see how much the originals weigh. And that should give us a pretty good idea of how much weight we're saving with these guys. And then we're going to install them and cover them up. Okay, so now we have obviously the stock axle and the new one. We're just going to go ahead and put them on the scale here and take a look and see what kind of difference we're going to get by switching this thing over. So first, standard axle, 415 grams. Okay. Titanium axle, 229 grams. So about 185 gram difference. That's pretty substantial. Next we'll do the swing arm pivot, and we'll put this axle back on, and then we'll do the swing arm pivot. There you go, sir. Tex is just getting this tightened back up, and as you can see, you really can't tell that that's anything but a standard axle on that side. This side you can sort of see the blue contrast against this, which we were just chatting. I think as soon as we can, we're going to swap these over to black. These were back ordered when we ordered that, but I think this would look better in black. So that's something I think we are going to move to. And then now we've of course moved the frame covers. We've taken those off. It just takes a couple of small, looks like 5mm bolts. Those are sixes? Mm-hmm. And then of course this nut which holds the actual pivot on, and that is a 19mm. This can get tricky. Yeah, that's gonna be tricky. I'm gonna put the weight, something under there.
I mean, you just jiggle the swing arm here.
Okay. May have to put the camera down to help him with this. Actually, scratch that. Will have to put the camera down. Okay, so here we have the new shaft. We're just going to go ahead and stick that on there. $160 grams. All right, and then we're going to actually just swap this out. So as soon as we get the original pulled out, I'll put it back on there. We'll see how much it weighs. Okay, so we've gotten this put in place, and we'll show you the other side. We're going to try to find a nut that's the right size for this. And as you can see, once again, that's an exact replica of the original, so perfect fit. It looks like it's an M15 by 1.5 nut. We're going to see if we can find something from ProBolt to fit that, and then we can go full tie. So today we're going to be doing a quick and obvious upgrade for most of you guys. It's something honestly in the past I haven't run a lot of, but I've typically not had exhaust that were very easy to crash on our Supermoto applications. Like on our Preload, we had the undertail, under seat I should say, and on our WR450 we had an Acura that was pretty well protected by the bodywork. However, on this we can see this is pretty nicely exposed, and so we're going to go ahead and put some exhaust sliders on here. And I just kind of did this based on aesthetics. I really like the RNG ones. We sell a few brands, but I think these are some of the nicer looking ones, and that's what you've got. They are sold in singles, so you need two for a dual setup like this. But yeah, it's just a nice looking piece. It's, you know, a pretty basic concept, but I think it looks nice enough. So we're going to slap these guys on, and when the inevitable crashing starts, hopefully the exhausts are going to be saved. This thing, we've already done some really small stuff since the last time you saw it. Namely, we finally got in our Zeta hand guards, which we really like. These are billet aluminum. We went with the black just because it kind of matches the sort of murdered out theme that we've got going on. And we did update the vinyl, as we mentioned before, just to give it a little more orange back there. But that's the little stuff. We've got some really, really nice upgrades in. First, we have our Brake Tech ductile iron front disc. We love these. This is what we've been using on all of our super bikes. You know, just like the Cowie there and the V4 over there. And we've been using them on Supermotos for a long time as well. They just work super well, and they actually weigh a little bit less than steel, and they just stop like nobody's business. Then, of course, we have to upgrade the rest of the front end. We've got our triples. We've got some of our braking stuff handled. Now it's time to do the forks. So to start, we have these beautiful Ohlins RXF 48s, which we're going to be doing some modification, setting them up for Supermoto use. Just the standard stuff. Going to be some length adjustments there. We're going to be changing some valving and some springs. And then we have these beauties right here. This is going to be our new fork bottoms. These are going to allow us to, obviously these are motocross forks, so they have an axial bottom. We're going to be switching to this so we can continue to use our radials. This has a 108mm mount, which is perfect because we have exactly the caliper for this that we have setting aside. And this also changes the offset a bit. This reduces the offset to 20mm. And I'll have to go back and look. I think the original is 30 or something like that. But we get a reduced offset, which improves trail. Lastly, with this kit, we also are going to be using the axle from SPS. This does require alternate wheel spacers. The ID of this axle is smaller than the original. We also ordered from him a titanium nut and titanium pinch bolts for the fork bottom. So this is basically just going to be a full turnkey kit when we're done. And then for the caliper, go over to one of our work tables over here and I'll grab the one we're going to use. We're going to use one of these guys. We have these beautiful Behringer calipers. We actually have a few sets of them. These are the Superbike spec units that have titanium pistons, and you can see there's magnets fitted inside. Just keeps the pad spread. We really like these, and we just have a few sets of them, so we're going to use one of those on this because we've really enjoyed them on our Superbike, and it should be perfect for this application. So next we're going to break these down and do some revalving and some length adjustments, and then we're going to pop these fork bottoms on. All right, so now you can see that Tex has gotten the complete lower disassembled here. This is a pretty straightforward process. These forks are designed to be really serviceable. So the next step is going to be just putting a clamping tool, or lollipop as they're often called, on this lower tube. And then we're basically just going to unscrew it from this bottom. Alrighty, so we're about to pop this little guy off, and what Tex is doing is just heating the lower. I want to get that to about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it just comes right off.
It just falls out.
No, we just heat this up just a little bit. It looks like it's hot, but it's not anything crazy, just because there is some thread lock compound in this, and we just want to kind of soften that up so that we're not potentially damaging threads when we use this tool to basically twist it off. This works kind of like a wrench. You pull that and it just loosens it. All right, Tex has now reapplied our soft jaws, and we are about to just install our fork tube into this. And basically, the nice thing, as Tex just pointed out, is that this doesn't have an axle clamp that kind of narrows down like the stock one does. So the whole thing is this width, so we don't have to hang the fork off the end of the vise like that. So now we're just going to drop this tube on here, torque it to spec, and then I guess we're going to do the cartridge and such on that one.
Yeah, we'll have to get into the cartridge and revalve that.
Perfect. Alrighty, so Tex has broken down this setting inside the front fork here. And here you can see what these are is essentially shim stacks. This is what people are, if you ever hear MotoGP riders or other people talk about the setting in the fork, they could be talking about clickers or positions, but a lot of times this is what we're referring to. And basically what you can do with this is you can change shim diameter. As you can see, there's varying sizes, and there's also varying thicknesses. And what you can do is change those sizes to affect the way that the fork dampens movement velocities. So that's what we're doing, is we're basically going to put a setting in here that's more comparable to something you might find in a road race motorcycle, because we're not going to be jumping this thing over triples or whatever. So we want it to feel really good and have more feedback and grip, and that's what we're going to tune it for. So what Tex is going to do is basically change these to achieve the feel that we want. Of course, we're not going to show what we're using on there because that's kind of like secret sauce type of stuff. But we're going to go ahead and put those in. And one thing that we've found that we're going to have to work towards, and this is something to keep in mind if you happen to buy a set of these fork bottoms from us for the Ohlins, we are changing the offset of the fork bottom. Again, this is just means the center line from here to here. And I think the original is actually 33. I might have said 25 or 30 before, but I think it is 33. So we got to change that. And what we've discovered is, I don't know if you can see this, but yeah, you can kind of see that bit of that nut right there is protruding through the axle path here. And that's this guy right here. So what we can do is that's made it to a hydraulic stop tube in the bottom of the fork. We have a couple of options. We can try to spin that inside the fork, which we're going to do first. If that doesn't work, we're just going to have to cut that nut right there. We're just going to literally grind an edge off of it. Not ideal because it's something you torque on, but it's not a lot of torque, and I don't think it's going to be a big issue, but I just want to point that out because this is something that you have to be mindful of when you get this reduced offset, which is going to be really beneficial. We've already done some chassis numbers and stuff and used our software to calculate where we're going to be, and this 20 millimeter offset is critical for me. What we're trying to achieve, I think it's really important. Probably get away with a little more. It might resolve this, but and I did speak to SPS. They say they're going to adjust this design in the future to somehow compensate for that. I'm not sure how yet. We'll touch on that later, but that's something just to be mindful of. You don't just throw it together. You gotta clock that. And so we're gonna work on that, figure out how we'll do it. And of course, we'll show you guys what we come up with to fix it. Hopefully, no cutting, but if so, it's not going to be the first time. Certainly won't be the last. So we'll now proceed to getting this shim stack changed and put together, and then we're going to assemble the brake side, and it's going to be about time to put these things on. Alrighty, so Tex has wrapped up the install on this fork, and we're really happy with how they came out. I did do something kind of boneheaded and put one of the stickers on backwards, and by that I mean in the wrong orientation on the fork tube, so I'm going to order another one and redo that. But here you can see it's kind of bubbled up, but normally it looks like this guy, which is perfect. But this this set of forks, to me, just looks amazing. I think this is going to be a really nice touch to this motorcycle, not just in the way it looks, obviously, but the feel that we can expect with this. The quality of the components in these is just so high. Like, it's so cool because the MX forks that Ohlins makes like this, they're akin to the Superbike forks that we have, in that they're just, everything in them is like a piece of jewelry. Everything is just made to such a high standard and high quality, and it translates at the end to just a really good feel for the rider. So yeah, this is what we've got. We're going to be putting these on, and they're completely ready to rip. And this is, of course, the caliper and the axle that we're going to be running. We did wind up having to machine the nut, and so Tex had to do some cutting, which you can see here. It's on the smaller leg. You can see that there's some cutting there. That's just, we had to do that in order to get it to clear through here. That we no longer have that protrusion that we had before. So in no way is that really going to become an issue that's going to affect performance or the ability to service this fork or anything like that. Tex was sure of that before beginning. And we did speak to SPS about this. They are going to update the design. So future guys that buy these, this is kind of a new product, a prototype, if you will. You guys won't have to deal with that. And so that's not something you're going to have to worry about. And realistically, you're probably going to have a shop do this. It is a bit of a complicated install. And generally, there's some other work that's going to need to be done to these forks, as you saw in this video. So it's probably something you won't have to worry about. But if you do buy some of these and it's the newer version, there's not going to be no cutting involved on the bottom end of the cartridge. So it's not an issue. Next, we're going to be putting these on the 450. We've got it on the lift over there. We're going to be able to do everything except for install the wheel, because we did have to get some special wheel spacers made, because with that new axle, as I mentioned before, we have a different ID now for those spacers. Axle's got a smaller OD. So naturally, we need wheel spacers to suit. We have some of those that have been made by a good friend of ours, Guy, and as soon as those get here, probably tomorrow, we'll be able to wrap everything up. So today we're just going to put the forks on. We're going to go ahead and put the brake disc on the wheel, and then as soon as the spacers arrive, we'll get everything mounted up and mocked up and make sure we look good. So Tex has got these mounted up into the X-Trigs, and they were quite a snug fit. And for now, we're just going to do some experimentation. We don't know where we want to set the final length on these, because there are some variables there. We really haven't ridden the bike. I mean, we're going kind of crazy, and I've not thrown a leg over it really, except for on the dyno. So we have to, I'm not really sure where I want the balance of the thing to be. So before we shorten the fork as much as we possibly could, we're going to run it a little bit sunk in the clamps, about 20 mils or so. And that'll just give me the ability to make some adjustments, figure out what I like, what I don't like, and then we can decide, do we want this thing to be shorter or whatever, and we can evaluate there. So next what we're gonna do is put these CRF fork guards on. Sorry about that. The battery and SD card in this have been something I've been having a hard time staying on top of, so we have enough space. And as I was saying, we have to put the CRF 450 guards on there. Unfortunately, we don't actually have the correct bolts for that, so I've ordered some titanium ones, and I've quick ordered some steel ones just to like get us by, because there's small chance we'll have a chance to test this bike shortly. But either way, I want to get them mounted and just make sure everything looks good. So what we have done is we've gotten our wheel spacers in, and a good friend of ours named Guy made these for us. We actually made a few sets in case we end up with a different brake caliper, brake disc spec. And we wanted to just make sure that we were able to get everything perfectly centered. As you can see, this is kind of just resting here right now. That's just sitting there. But everything looks pretty good. We found the right caliper spacing. We're a little close there. I'd like to have a couple of mils of space, and we're a little shy of that, but the it's pretty close. I feel okay with it. And also with this Behringer caliper, we don't want to have the pads overhanging the actual disc, which we do not have, so I feel pretty good about it. So yeah, I think we've got a good starting point. Like I say, we're going to test, we're going to figure out final length and geometry after doing some riding, maybe do some slight internal changes, just depending on feel. Hopefully that's pretty close. But we may later shorten the fork if we decide we want to keep it running in this low position, and potentially even maybe lower if we wanted to try that. So for now, we're pretty good. I think the next step is we're going to be soon getting our new brake master. We're going to get one that's got a slightly larger bore. Going to go with a 15 to start, and that's going to, of course, made up to our Behringer Superbike caliper. And I think that's about it. That's going to be the first major series of upgrades before we actually do some riding on this thing. And from there, we have a whole plethora of really badass upgrades that are going to be coming. So before we get on to wrapping up the front end install, we actually do have a few bits that I'm really excited about from a carbon fiber supplier that makes some really trick stuff for KTMs, which is called CMT. They're an Italian carbon fiber composites manufacturer. So right away, we've gotten this super trick crash protector, and we have one for the other side as well. But they also make these really nice engine mounts. And this is just a solid chunk. It's not like a wrapped or coated piece or whatever. It's literally just a piece of autoclave carbon. And yeah, it should be a lot lighter, certainly looks better. And we're gonna pop off the stock one now, right here, and compare weights and see what we're losing by swapping over to these. And they're not horribly expensive. I mean, they're certainly not cheap, but I think this stuff's pretty reasonably priced for what you're getting. All right, so here we have our scales already been sitting out because we're weighing these crazy brake discs that we're looking at for a different project, and we are looking at 64 grams for the original piece, which is actually pretty light. You can kind of tell this is not a really beefy piece of metal. And then here, so a little less than an ounce. Not a huge weight reduction, but it adds up, especially since we've installed our heavier RXF forks. Now we need to do everything we can to try to get that weight back down, so this is a good start. So we're moving along really fast with this thing. We've actually had a little bit of a change of plans for the weekend. We had planned to do some testing with our super bikes. Of course, you have the Ducati and the Kawasaki there, but the event is completely full, not the best for that kind of testing. And so we're gonna push that back by about 2 weeks. And fortunately, there is an event where we can ride the Supermoto. I think the UPS guy's about to come up and make a bunch of noise, so we're going to be able to, we're actually going to be able to use this Supermoto at Carolina Motorsports Park. A good friend of ours named Casey Clark hosts these really nice track events there on the kart track, which is a pretty nice track actually, perfect for this type of motorcycle. And we're going to go there and hopefully do some laps. We're still waiting on a few bits, but we want to show you, since we don't have a lot of time, we've just been kind of plugging away at this thing, and I've been helping a little bit, so not as much filming, but you can see we have fitted our master cylinder. We've decided to go with the 15 RCS Corsa Corda. Should nicely suit the caliper that we're using. And of course, we've put all the titanium bolts all over it, and I've torched those. And we've also fitted our CMT carbon components. So now we have all of our case covers on. We've replaced the stock frame covers with these carbon units, and of course we've got the engine mounts, and that really just makes the motorcycle pop. This thing, it just looks like it's serious business now. Looking at this bike compared to the way it was before, they looked awesome stock, but now it just looks super badass in my opinion. So we're gonna just do a little more prep. We have a brake line coming in tomorrow that our friends at Supermoto have shipped out to us, and once we get that mounted, we're gonna pull the kickstand off for the event and get our tire warmers packed up and get ready to do some laps. And of course we'll bring a video camera so you guys can have some footage, and it'll be good to test out this setting in the fork. We're doing something a little different than what we've done in the past, so we'll see how that feels and keep you guys updated along the way. All right, so we've gotten our Supermoto brake line in, and we're just going to show you this. This was built to spec, which is something you can do on our site if you want one of these, but essentially this is just like a standard road race style line, but it has this stiffening tube, as they're called, that you often see on dirt bike stuff, and it literally just makes it hold that straight form for a section, and you can select the length of that. We basically emulated the stock tube, and of course we went with the titanium banjos and to match the rest of the scheme, and we did the carbon look line. So Tex is just gonna mock this up, or mount this up rather, and then we're gonna bleed it up, and really this bike should be pretty much ready. One of the last steps we're gonna do, since we do have that brand new Brake Tech iron on there, you can see the rotor looks kind of black. That's actually a special coating, because with it being ductile iron, they have to coat them because they're more prone to rusting if there's moisture on the disc. So when you first get one of these, what you have to do is basically put a set. Normally we use pads that we don't really care about, so we use either old ones, or if we have like some crappy non-race or street style pads that we have no intention of using, that are just left over in the toolbox or something, we'll put those in the caliper, and you'll basically just ride around and burn that stuff off the disc. You'll see, I mean, there'll be a pad swept area. It's pretty clear when the black stuff is removed fully. Once that's done, we'll pop out the pads that we don't care about, put the good ones in, and typically, since we're racetrack, we'll do a couple of laps at like a medium pace, and then, you know, ready to rip. That's kind of our break-in process. May not perfectly follow the Brake Tech guidelines, but it's worked well for us so far. So now all we got to do is just get this run, which Tex is going to do. We don't have yet a brake line clamp for the CRF fork guard here, so that's something that we don't really need it for now. We're just going to probably use zip ties or something to secure the fork, or excuse me, the brake line there. And we'll get one of those eventually that suits the bike. It's been hard to find one that's not red or blue, which I don't really want to do. So yeah, next I think all we have left is to scrub that rotor. Then we're going to load this thing up in the trailer, and hopefully the next you see of us, we're going to be at Carolina Motorsports Park doing laps. Alrighty, so we're going to wrap this video up, and I'm really happy to report that we did get a chance to take this thing to the racetrack. I took it to CMP, which they do these Supermoto events called CMP Supermoto, hosted by Casey Clark. If you are in the Southeast and you want to do some Supermoto stuff, it's a great opportunity to come ride. And basically, we got a chance to really give this thing a shakedown, and I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to make some small changes. I'm going to go up in spring a little bit, because I can tell that while the bike had fantastic grip, some of the steering when the throttle was open was not quite what I wanted, and there was a bit of squatting that I think that we can get rid of. So we're going to make some changes there. Overall, the settings that we have in the shock and the fork, I'm quite happy with. Just some small clicker adjustments, and I was able to find a really happy medium there. Especially the fork feels awesome. So really glad with that. You can kind of see, you know, this is a full day of riding quite a bit. About 2.5 hours of actual on-track time, which is a good bit for a single day. And this is the kind of wear that we're seeing here. And I did actually bring the cameras and record some footage. However, it is garbage. I did a really bad job of angling the camera, and it's a great shot of like the front of the wheel and stuff. So I'll put like a few seconds of it in there, but I'm not going to make you sit through that because it's horrible. But I want you to see why we're not putting it in there. another guy that we met there that had a really trick Husky FS450 named TJ that got some pretty cool footage of us just kind of cutting some laps and goofing off and stuff. So I'm gonna see if we can get that, and hopefully when you see this video at the end, you'll have some footage from there. If nothing else, we'll link to his video because he posted it on his channel, so you can see some stuff there. But yeah, it was awesome. I love this thing. I can't wait for the next round of upgrades. We've got some really special stuff in store that I think is gonna improve some of the small weaknesses that we sensed there. Especially, I got a chance to ride his bike, and it had some stuff on it that's kind of in the works for us. And I don't want to say too much, but there's some stuff that's definitely going to make this thing faster and easier to turn a fast lap time on. So anyway, now what we're doing, we're going to change the spring. We're going to test some other things with the shock. I have something we want to try. I don't know if it's going to work or not. And so we'll show you that in just a moment. So unfortunately in our editing, I'm seeing that one of our videos was corrupted. So this is going to seem a little out of sequence because I'm having to reshoot part of this just so you can know what the hell I'm talking about in this. So the idea that I had was we didn't like the lack of adjustability on the stock preload adjuster on the TTX at the racetrack. You know, it uses the spanner tools, basically collars that you just crank on. It was very difficult to get to, and after a certain point, almost impossible while it was on the bike. So you have to pull the shock off. We don't want to be doing all that. So we had, of course, our KTM OEM quote-unquote adjuster, which is made by X-Trig. And we were like, you know, let's see if we can get one of these to fit on the TTX. So we did some measuring and we did some calculating, and we found one that would fit. Of course, due to the design, it adds an increased amount of load on the spring because it's essentially thicker than the original stuff, which is essentially the net difference is going to be what you see here. So the top collar there on the silver part versus the black portion here, you know, it's much thicker, and all of that amounts to added preload on the spring. So what we had to do, and this may be redundant because haven't seen everything that has not been corrupted yet, but we've swapped out spring collars to achieve the preload that we want to achieve without having a spring that's completely cranked on. So sorry about that. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, that video got kind of corrupted and just wasn't playing back properly. So that's what we're talking about. On to the original stuff. Alrighty, so we've done some calculating, and we see that every turn of the adjuster there, full turn, you know, 360 degrees, does practically nothing. So you need to do 12.5 turns per 1 millimeter of adjustment. So this is way more fine, so to speak, than what you would get with the Ohlins version of a manual preload adjuster like this. So it's totally different. It takes a lot of turns, but on the other hand, it's still going to be more convenient than having to take the shock off or trying to reach tools inside that are impossible to work with without beating the hell out of your adjuster. So still happy with this. We're still going to rock with this thing. And so now we're just going to put it back in and make sure that our drop spring doesn't have any kind of clearance issues with the linkage and stuff on the bike. So that's going to be the next step. We're going to put this thing back in and see how it goes. All right, so Tex is just bolting this guy back in place. We have confirmed we have no clearance issues. It's a little tight, but certainly not anything to be concerned about. There you can see the adjuster, and it's positioned that way, so we have really nice, easy access once all the panels are back on. We're gonna just be able to run a tool straight into there. So we can just get a T-handle or whatever, one of our speed handles with an 8mm on there, and we could just crank away without having to hit body work or anything like that. So that's gonna be the most ideal position, I think, for this adjuster that we have. So we're gonna just finish putting her back together, and we'll do one final walk around. Alrighty, she's all put together. Here you can see what we're working with. There's our adjuster in place, kind of tucked away in there, but certainly gonna make things a little easier at the track. At least we can make relatively painless adjustments. And here, once more, you can see how it's gonna work inside there. Still pretty buried, but whatever. We can get our tool on there without much trouble, especially we can move this boot out of the way and we're right there. So cool. Well, I think that's going to do it. This is another one that's going to be super long, but I feel like we got a lot done. We'll try to get some of that footage in there for you, and we'll show some of that footage from TJ's YouTube channel. And next we have a really badass round of upgrades, so probably going to be a couple of weeks before we get that done, but the next step's going to be a really big one. So once again, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.